Welcome back to the Capes and Tights podcast right here on capesandtights.com. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg. This episode is once again brought to you by our friends over at Galactic Comics and Collectibles at galacticcomicsandcollectibles.com. This episode, we welcomed Craig DiLouie to the podcast to talk about his novel, My Ex, the Antichrist, and so much more. Craig is known for books such as How to Make a Horror Movie and Survive, Episode 13, Suffer the Children of Red Peak, and many, many, many more. His works have been nominated for major literary awards such as Bram Stoker Award and the Audie Award. This was a fun conversation. We chatted my ex, the Antichrist, and so much more. But before you listen, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, all those places. Rate, review, subscribe over on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, you can visit us at capesandtights.com for so much more. This is Craig DiLouie chatting my ex, the Antichrist, right here on the Capes and Tights podcast. Enjoy, everyone. Welcome to the podcast, Craig. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm glad we were able to hook up and do this conversation because I really like your books. So there's a benefit there, as well as I like the promoting of books that I like. So we're here talking your books, My Ex, the Antichrist, and more. But before we jump in too far into this, Craig, why don't you tell us a little bit about when or how you got into writing books in the first place? Just, it doesn't have to be super long, but it can be if you want. But just a little bit about your background on becoming an author.
Uh, yeah, so I first discovered I liked the written word in the 80s. I grew up on a farm outside a small town in New Jersey and often found myself relying on my imagination. My friends and we all did D&D and
Mhm.
wargaming and all that stuff. Um, but I like the idea when I would read, I would be like really in it, way more than role playing.
Mhm.
And I found I wanted to be the DM.
Mhm.
I wanted to
Mhm.
be the dungeon master for everyone. And so found myself really interested in writing. The author that sort of started it all for me was Robert E. Howard. So plenty of wish fulfillment stuff
Mhm.
for a 13-year-old, 14-year-old boy, growing up in the middle of nowhere, and just found myself falling in love with it and did the whole thing where I was trying to be him. And I would write like the first act of like five different novels handwritten and then just get, I'd see a shiny object and go chase that for a
Yeah.
while. In the 90s, I got a little more serious about it. I wrote my first novel, and it was a novel about original superheroes. It had all these big themes, and it was a little bit ahead of its time. And it was a little bit ahead of its time for me too. I wasn't really ready yet.
Mhm.
Uh, Writers are born in that I think we're predisposed to do it, but
Mhm.
we're not exactly we're not born to be good at it. And I think there's a prejudice in our society that you pick up a typewriter and suddenly you're a great writer. No, it takes lots and lots of practice. So I got all that in the 90s. I wrote several novels, didn't really go anywhere, and I was getting really discouraged by the whole system.
Mhm.
But then in the early noughties, it really opened up and started to democratize first with on-demand printing, which resulted in a revolution in small press and a
Mhm.
lot more opportunities, a lot more risk takers. And then, of course, self-publishing with the ebook. And so I was able to get my first publication credit was me trying to be Chuck Palahniuk with this novel about the whole conspiracy theory world, and that was called Paranoia. It was published in 2001, and it did okay for a small press title. Did a
Mhm.
sci-fi novel with them that did okay, and then I did the zombie novel when I was just about to give up, and like my daughter was born. I was like, I should just be taking care of her instead of indulging this, you know, time pit of a hobby I had, and um, that's an agonizing labor,
Mhm.
So yeah, and that book exploded, and
Mhm.
I ended up getting with Bermuda Press. Did two more zombie novels for them. Got an agent, and then the agent got me into Gallery Books, which is a division of Simon and Schuster. They published Stephen King. They published
Yeah.
a lot of great authors, and I was able to get in with them with a novel called Suffer the Children,
Mhm.
which even today, that was 11 years ago, and even today it sells really well. It's
Mhm.
just this underground hit. and it got very little promotion, very little attention from the publisher. But they just came out with a new edition, and
Hmm.
it's re-released it. It's just unkillable. It's an undead book in itself, and then from there I got a new agent, and they got me into Hachette, which is you know, uh, owned by Hachette Livre, which I
Yeah,
think is like the third largest publisher in the
yeah.
world. And in the US, they have Orbit, and in the UK, which is their a speculative fiction
Hmm.
imprint. And then they have a new horror imprint as part of that called Run For It. And I've been with Hachette for, multiple books now. And then next year I have a duology coming out. And so I'm one of their what you would call stable, a
Hmm.
stable writer. I'm in the stable. Their horror guy. And it's been an amazing journey. I'll just cap this long intro by saying it's been an amazing journey. I work at home in my pajamas. I
Yeah.
commute to the coffee maker. I'm watching my kids grow up. I'm a very lucky man, extremely blessed. It's
Hmm.
extremely hard to get in with Big Five Publishing. And um, I can't tell you how I did it. It looks like someone falling up the stairs. And how
Hmm.
do you tell someone how you fell up the stairs? Just one thing led to another, and I've been just very fortunate. So
It sounds like it. And it sounds like you enjoy doing it, which is great, which is one of the
yeah,
big things I think. And I think you see that and you almost read that in people's novels, that like when there's someone like churning things out just to get things out, you might see a little bit, not like it's not obvious that they're not liking it, but they're just doing it for the money or something like that,
yeah,
which there's not a ton of money, but like, but the idea that your novels, actually stumbled upon you for the first time with How to Make a Horror Movie and Survive. And that was when I was first getting into doing more reviews of actual novels. And so I was able to get like, the arc, the printed arc, which is somewhere around here, the actual printed arc of
uh,
that. And then I was like, I heard about you because so many people liked episode 13.
mm,
You know what I mean? It's like one of those things that was like, oh, people, I hear a lot of people talking about episode 13 and it got put on my, to be read list. And
mhm.
then I saw you had a book coming out called How to Make a Horror Movie and Survive. And again, that title, the cover, all that stuff made me go, okay, maybe I'll read this first, and then I'll jump into other stuff later. And I absolutely loved it, and so that was really good on that sense. And then I don't know what happened, but I just like at that point, I think I wanted to talk to you then. I honestly think at that point, I was like, oh, let's get Craig on the podcast. And then something, like how like I book out pretty far in advance a lot of times. And I think probably the schedule filled up and then it was like, oh, and then I forgot. And then you came up with this banger of a novel right here that I flew through because I enjoyed it so much. My ex, The Antichrist. Again, another novel with a name that goes, I got to read this book. And I'm so pumped about it. So it's been a fun like kind of journey for myself, discovering your writing and stuff like that. But now I'm hooked. Now I'm like, you see your name on something, I'm gonna be reading it, which is gonna be awesome. So I'm glad you're writing books and sitting in your pajamas and walking to the coffee maker. But I mean, I feel that way. I mean, I work from home as well, so it's like one of those things. I grab the seltzer out of my own refrigerator instead of my lunchbox or something like that. It's a
Yep.
it's a nice little thing.
Look
I
at
feel
your
like
office.
I feel like I get more done too. I feel like there's no one talking to me,
Oh
so I
yeah,
can
yeah,
actually
yeah,
like
yeah,
just
yeah,
get stuff done, and no one's bothering me. There's no
yeah,
meetings. Most of that stuff is an
yeah.
email, which is nice. I don't have to have actually a meeting to talk about something that could have been an email. It's really nice
Yeah,
in
when
that
I
sense.
started working at home, I became so much more. I used to work. I started at an ad agency, and
Mhm.
then I was editor of a trade magazine. That's when I lived in New York, and and I was there for 7 years. But yeah, I would spend the entire day, like having smoke breaks
Yeah,
outside, bitching about
yeah,
so
yeah,
and so or who and who,
yeah,
and what are we going to do next? And oh, we're being bought. What does that mean? Will
yeah.
they have to do this? And like what and then I'd go home that night and work and actually get my work done. Like so many meetings during the day. It was
Yeah.
just yeah. So I'm a big believer in working at home, and I
Mm.
think COVID sort of taught everyone that like people can be trusted. We're
Yeah.
grown-ups. We want to be productive and work, and that that actually you're actually more efficient and productive if you
Yeah.
do.
I think one of those things that like I talk to other people that I work with and say that like it's you almost hold yourself accountable. I always want to be able to be have an answer for when someone that's above me says, "Well, what did you do today?" Do you know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
I feel like they don't ask that question to me if I was in the office. If I was sitting in the office, they saw me there. They're like, "I don't care what he's doing. He's a body in a chair. He's obviously taking the time to come here."
Yeah,
But if I
yeah.
have to answer for what I'm doing at home, I never get that question. But if I ever did have to answer that question for being at home, I want to be able to have the answer. And so I feel like I'm on top of things, crossing things off lists way more here because I'm just afraid the day that they're like, "What'd you do today?" And that was the day that I
Yeah,
like,
I just got the impression executives like to walk around and see the serfs, like,
yeah.
you
We're just
know,
like we're just sitting there. Like as long as there's a body in a chair, it doesn't matter what they're doing. They could be watching YouTube
yeah,
all
they're
day.
VIPs.
It's
They need peace to see them being VI,
yes,
that's
yes. It's a
because
it's a
why, what's the, yeah, anyway,
yeah. But so you have
that's all
this
separate.
you have so like if you think back to you did a couple books about TV really, and then you had the movies, and now you're doing music. Is this passions outside of the horror genre and horror novel that you're writing seeping in? Are you a big fan of TV, ghost story type things? Are you a fan of horror movies? Are you a fan of music? Is that why these books are being written, or is this just like it feels like is a space for your book to be placed?
Mostly a space,
Okay.
I mean, I like music and I like
Yeah.
movies and I like movie making. These are all interests,
Yeah.
Um, but not so much a passion that I was
Okay.
like, oh, I got to come up with a
Got him.
horror
Yeah.
book that I can put that in. I was more like, when you're a horror writer, you're going back to the same tropes,
Mhm.
so like instead of a haunted film, I did a haunted camera,
Mhm.
like big deal. I mean, that's not that revolutionary, like so that I switched it up and made it the
Yeah.
camera. So when you do think and the Antichrist, like
Yeah.
that's that's a very old horror trope. So the two things I try and do with it, one is I try and give it a vehicle
Hmm.
to give people something to do outside of dealing with the monster. Um, and also just to make it more interesting and feel more lived in.
Hmm.
Like when I did the Antichrist, I didn't want to be like The Omen's a great movie, but the whole thing about the Antichrist sort of falls apart if you
Yeah.
think about it too much and you ask questions like, well, why does the devil have to, why is
Yeah.
God doing it? But then it's, you know, so you want it to be scary, but you want it to be sort of believable. So you have to kind of go all in the Omen style
Hmm.
and, just go for that religious awe. Or you need to go the other way and make it feel lived in. And I like to try and make these tropes feel lived in. I just feel like it feels more real.
Hmm.
Um, and when the horror trope shows up, it's sort of the juxtaposition of the horror trope and the characters who feel like real people, and then the real setting. It just makes it all come alive so
Hmm.
much more. Like, oh yeah, this is actually the Antichrist and how the Antichrist would appear, and it wouldn't be like, this. You wouldn't hear the Gregorian chants in the background, and people wouldn't be dying all over the place. It would look more like this. Um, and so that's sort of the approach I take with it. And then of course I always try and switch it up. I'm sort of Bradley Engler at my editor's wild man when it comes to editorial. Like, um, when I was pitching episode 13,
Hmm.
I played a lot of Phasmophobia, uh, this ghost hunting game, and I wanted to bottle the dread of that.
Yeah.
And I like the trope of a house within a house.
Hmm.
Um, it's done so by so many, a couple books and movies have done that really well, and I just love that trope. And when I was pitching it to my editor, he said, "Oh, I need something more." And I knew my editor was into found footage horror, so I was like, "I'm going to write it as a found footage horror book." So he's like, "Yeah, do that." And then I must have mentioned oral history, so suddenly when I was pitching Mike's the Antichrist, he's like, "Yeah, it's going to be an oral history, right?" And I'm like, "Oh,"
I
and
guess
he's like,
so.
"Yeah, yeah, yeah, do that." And so I'm sort of his wild man. And it's challenging because when you write in these different formats, at first you don't know what you're doing, and you have to read a lot of it and figure it out so you do it right and maximize its strengths and minimize its weaknesses. But the end result of all this is, besides, you know, making the trope feel lived in, um, and then experimenting with the format. What I like to do is try and make it seem like every time someone reads one of my books, they're like, it would be hard to guess it was me.
Yeah.
Um, they don't feel like they're reading the same book over and over again. Now, the cost of that is some readers will read episode 13 and think every one of my books is episode 13, or
Yes.
they'll read Stuff for the Children and they'll think everyone.
Eh,
So, like How to Make a Horror Movie and Survive and Mike's Antichrist are a little more tongue-in-cheek
mhm.
horror, whereas Stuff for the Children is about as visceral as you can get.
Yeah.
It's actually horrifying, um, like really horrifying. And so, there's like I said, there's a cost to that. But for me as an artist, I just love doing it that way. I
Mhm.
love surprising people and making them feel like they're always getting something new, something different.
Well, I hope there's enough, of your fans now and your readers now that can have a core group that's going to buy your book no matter what because they enjoy
Yeah.
that part of your storytelling.
Yes.
To me, this one struck a little bit of a chord because I wasn't that great of a musician. I could play the drums to keep the beat, but if you wanted me to make it any fancier, you want me to like throw anything in there, and it was throwing completely off. I wasn't that. Both my other brothers, I have an older brother and a younger brother, and they're both extremely musically talented. My parents are musically talented. It's just I got stuck with the anti-music thing. So what I did was I was like, I'm pretty good at managing people. Like that's my skill. And so I managed bands for a while. And
Uh,
so like I got my brother signed to an independent record deal and all this stuff. So all this stuff when I was reading this book, it was like it struck a chord in a way that it wasn't exactly obviously because I've never actually met the Antichrist, at least that I know of. I don't know for sure, but like you have this thread that I can at least go on. I was just talking to someone about the Institute from Stephen King, and his new series just hit MGM Plus last night as of recording this, and I was saying it's so funny because when I read the description of it, I was like, "Oh, I like Xavier's School for the Gifted Youngsters from Marvel Comics," and then I'm like, "And I like Stephen King." I'm like, this is just the smallest thread that's not even close to being the actual book has anything to do with mutants like that.
yeah.
But in my mind, I'm like, "Hey, whatever gets me to read the book in the first place." And so
Yeah.
seeing that and seeing the musical connection to it was like, "Oh, this is fun." Plus, I read so many horror novels to have something that's like different. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not so like the whole story itself isn't like, oh my God, this is like the most different book I've ever read in my life.
Right.
But at least it's like there's something different about it that pulled me out of, any of the generic, the horror novels I'm reading right now that made it go, okay, there's a lot of music involved in this, as well
Mhm.
as this horror elements and this Antichrist elements. And I loved, I think it was Publisher Weekly. Did they say the Omen meets Spinal
Oh
Tap?
yeah, for the
And I
one
was like,
for the
I was like,
Armageddon scene.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that to me, I'm like, that's a pretty good, that's a pretty good comparison here. Again, you mentioned how it isn't exactly the Omen, but in the same sense that I can understand how someone could compare the two of them together. And then Spinal Tap, obviously, if you're a music fan or a comedy fan, movie fan, this is like a classic, one of those, funny music movies of old times. But it's like I said, that thread that I could pull on and say it's music but horror, which was a lot of fun. And again, standing out to me in a crowd in that sense. I could turn people off, I don't know, but in the same sense to me, it stood out of the crowd, which was really cool.
Right, right, right.
It's
Yeah.
it's a yeah, I mean it's different. And that's what's so cool about it. And then you mentioned that it's one of those things that it can annoy people who are big fans of yours. But
It can,
hey,
well, yeah, readers, it's really funny the whole thing about original, right?
mm,
First of all, even original isn't
no, yeah,
original.
it's
Everything we
exactly.
do is derivative in some
Yes.
some way, shape, or form. And then the other thing that's a consideration is, like publishers. Like, why don't publishers publish anything original? And then as artists, we always think we're
Mhm.
supposed to give the publisher something original, but they don't want original.
No,
They
no.
want they want the familiar with a twist. And why?
Mhm.
Because that's what readers like. So
Yes.
so I try and do that, but I do strike out my own territory, and it's harder to build a true fan base because when you do that, like
Mm,
when every book is different.
yeah.
But like I said, the story. sometimes you have to choose the reader or the
Mhm.
story. Um, like, oh, well, this would happen because that happens on every TV show. It's like, well, I'm not going to do that because that's
Mhm.
not what the story needs. And so as an artist, you serve the story and hope it connects with the readers. And
Mhm.
this book so far has connected with a lot of readers, and so I'm very happy to hear about that.
And that's good, and it's at least you're in the horror genre, like what I mean, like at least these books are all in the horror genre, whether it's touching a little bit or extremely like visceral, like you mentioned,
Right,
stuff for the
right.
children. At least it's in that. I talked to Philip Fracassi. He did Third Rule of Time Travel, and he says, yeah, he
Yep.
said he probably pissed off a bunch of sci-fi fans, not knowing that this book was going to be sci-fi and missed out on it, or all of his fans that are fans of his horror is like, okay, now that they read this book and it's not horror at all, and he's like, what the hell? But I said, but the truth of the matter is, if you're a fan of the author, you should potentially at least get something out of it, and that's what's really cool about your books being a little bit different. Is that at least I got something different out of it every time. And again, I'm not bored. And
Yeah.
I like
And
the
you
idea
build
that
a
it
fan
makes you
base
think.
around
Yes,
that.
yes, yes.
That oh what I'm gonna it's like I'm opening a present. I don't know what's in there.
What's
Like
Craig gonna do next? Like,
yeah,
what's
exactly.
what's gonna happen
Exactly.
here? I mean, you mentioned your editor, the oral history part of it, which was obviously a pretty cool way of telling a story, a fictional story like this. And we talked a little bit about how you change things up from book to book. But like, where did the original idea and conception of this specific book come from? Was this something you had tooling in your brain for a while, or is this something that came up more recently? How did like this specific novel come to be?
Well, the oral history format is what we call epistolary,
Mm,
meaning found footage, really,
yeah.
or found media.
Hmm.
Dracula was, largely found media. Um, and the oral history version of that is, you know, VH1's Behind the Music, Rolling Stone. There have been lots of books. In fiction, it's been done by various authors. Chuck Palahniuk did
Mm,
an oral history. Daisy Jones and the
yep.
Six was probably popularized it more than other authors. Um, but I just love the idea of the oral history
Hmm.
in that it when you do epistolary, you can mix things up. So it's always something different, something different, something different. So one of the things that was great about episode 13 is every time you turn a page, it was like there was a journal, someone reacting to events, or there was a video script. This is the
Hmm.
spooky thing that happened in the house the researchers found. Here's an email, here's a text. And so even though it's kind of a big book, it really flies by for
Hmm.
that. With oral history, I found it's the same kind of effect. Someone different's always speaking. You have that charm and comedy of unreliable narrators. They're all being interviewed separately, but it's all mixed up, like
Yeah.
the quotes. So everyone gets their say. They're criticizing each other. They're remembering things differently. There's a lot of fun you can have with that.
Hmm.
And I just thought it was striking. It's a striking form, and I thought really fit this story of how, we all know the story of the band's rise and fall, but what
Hmm.
about before, while it was just getting started,
Hmm.
and one of the band members turns out to be the Antichrist.
Ridiculous.
They figure it out, and he figures it out about the same time. Um, and there's a big regional battle, the band's called Armageddon coming up.
Yeah.
And so what happened during that year? Um, so now, and so you have the lead singer of this band, you know, uh, she walks into a police station 10 years into her band's stardom and confesses to murder. And then years later, she decides to break her silence. She's going to tell it all. And so now the rest of the band, the Shivers, they all come forward and say, "We're going to tell all."
Hmm.
And if she's going to agree to be interviewed, we will too. And so there's this whole idea, kind of like gossipy kind of feel that it's real and that they're telling us this inside scoop, and all the thrill and all the popularity of the actual oral history
Hmm.
form in nonfiction translates super well
Yeah.
into fiction, and aids in willing suspension of disbelief and this idea that maybe this actually happened and it's a lot of fun to pretend
Hmm.
like that. And so that was kind of why I went with the oral history as
Yeah.
a form. Plus, I kind of cut my teeth on it with
Hmm.
episode 13. And when I pitched it as found footage to my editor, and he said he loved it, I was like, oh my God, what have I done? Because
Hmm.
I don't read, I haven't read a lot of epistolary.
Yeah.
I wasn't even sure I liked it. And I thought that the form had some big flaws, which is you feel like you're a fly on the wall,
Hmm.
and that's delightful. That is just the absolute great thing about the form.
Yeah.
But you lose that intimacy. You don't know what's going on in their heads. And so I came up with this idea of like, okay, they're going to do journals.
Hmm.
And while they're in the house, because in ghost hunting, the body is a sensor. So you write down everything you're feeling, and then that would be published on the ghost hunting TV show's website as a marketing ad.
Hmm.
Um, and so that kind of balanced it out. So all the big events I could show in video and give you that fly on the wall feeling, that titillating feeling. And
Yeah.
then I would say, okay, then the characters would react to it with the journal. And then the same thing with my ex. I think there's just this, you have to find the strengths of the form and mitigate the weaknesses.
Yeah. Yeah.
The weaknesses of the oral history form. I wrote 10,000 words and threw them all out because I was indulging it and doing
Yeah.
so much bird walking because I was like, but this is real, but this is how people talk and this
Yeah.
is real. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm not telling a story. So I had to throw it all out and start from scratch and go from there. And remember, I was telling a story, but within this format and
Yeah.
use its strengths.
I loved it, and I think I'm a big proponent. I love to learn, like I like just like learning things. Like I watch documentaries, I read historical books and things like that too. But and so this is kind of like one of those things where like it touched multiple bases on that. Like it gave me that ability, like I was learning something. Like I'm learning about the Shivers, I'm learning about this band, learning about this Antichrist, all in the same sense. And at the end of the book, you're like, wait, this is fiction. This is not, this is not
Yeah.
real. But I also laughed at the end because I was like any band that's ever had struggles with someone in their band being kind of a mean person, whatever, just
Yeah.
show them this book and be like, it could be worse. It could be 100% worse.
Yeah.
But yeah, so now I'm like gonna laugh at anybody. So, oh, this band broke up because they couldn't get along. I'm like, see, it could have had the Antichrist in your band, but
Yeah.
no, it feels like it had the sense of me learning something, but really, I just was enjoying it. And at the end, you're like, oh, that was a very enjoyable experience because again, I felt like that same muscles I was using in that same part of my brain I was using when I was watching a documentary or some sort of VH1 behind the music or something like that. But again, it's a fictionalized version of that. So you were able to play with that too and add some more unbelievable parts to it because it was this
Right.
fictional story, which was really cool. But yeah, I just thought it was kind of funny the idea that I've always been in seen bands with the one band member that's kind of a dick, but like they've never been the Antichrist. Again, they might have been. They're just not showing themselves yet. I
Yeah.
can't promise you that, but I think it's a cool way. And now you've done episode 13. You've done this book in that format too, in multiple. Is this something that you would like to toy with again, or is this something that like, okay, now I've done it. I don't want to be known as the person who does this oral history type book only, or is this something that like I say, hey, if it comes up and the right story is there for it, I'll do something similar.
Um,
I'm putting you on the spot right here,
I don't
Craig. If
know.
you
I
you had
feel
to make
like,
your decision right now.
well, you never say never.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
But if the story requires it,
yeah. Mhm.
but I feel like I've done this, so I'm moving on.
Yeah.
Next year, I am doing something slightly experimental. We're doing duology.
Mhm.
So two books will come out in the same year. They'll have very similar covers. They'll be published months apart. Um, so it's like kind of a part one and part two of
Mhm.
the same story, and it inverts the trope of the summer camp slasher,
Okay.
where you have one of the tropes is the bumbling deputy who's not too bright and he always arrives too late to do anything other than bear witness, and the sheriff doesn't care and doesn't believe the kids, and so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to tell his story.
Mhm.
This is this is kind of a murder mystery in a way. There's been a summer camp murders, and it's been claimed it's a supernatural killer,
Mhm.
and the deputy arrives too late and he saves the final girl, but that doesn't save everyone else, and he feels
Mhm.
guilt about this, so he wants to redeem himself by catching the killer. And so this is his redemption story, that particular horror trope.
Mhm.
And again, I do all my signatures, so I went back and I looked at every single, like Jason Voorhees and like
Mhm.
every single trope used in all those slasher movies. And I was like, okay, well, he gets shot, but why does he go down but then get back up? Or
Mhm.
how is he always in front of people? Like, what is it? How does he get there? And so I explain it all. I just gave him a mythology and my villain a mythology and explained every single, trope, to again make it feel lived in and
Mhm.
believable. And there's also they also serve as little Easter eggs. It's like, oh my God, I know that from this
Yeah.
X, so so I'm doing that as something that's a little more experimental. And then after that, it really, I'm pitching. I would love to do a book like Electric State, where I team with an artist, and it's half art and half text, and there's creative nonfiction. I would love to do creative, no, a fictional creative nonfiction book. Um, that would be really fun. So yeah, I'm always interested in doing experimental things. It's not really my thing.
Yeah.
It just kind of comes out that way.
Yeah.
It's just opportunities, and the editor's up for it. So I'm like, yeah, let's give it a shot. Um, but as far as oral history or the other type of epistolary, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe, but probably
It's
not, but
so
maybe.
you're not burnt out by it in that sense that you'd be able to willing to, if the story, like I said, I think a lot of this
No,
stuff
I'd
if the
happily
story
do it
fits it. Yeah.
again. I just want to be careful about developing a shtick.
Yeah.
Um, but I
And then
think
someone will get
that,
mad at you for not doing that anymore.
yeah, and then of course, if I had a shtick, it'd be good, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, episode 13 was my best-selling R title. I should just do episode
Yeah.
13 over and over
Episode
again.
14, episode 14.
But yeah, exactly. Or just, the same thing with a twist, the same thing
Yeah.
with a twist,
Hmm.
but that's just not me. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
nobody's at
Absolutely.
fault here.
Mhm.
It's just that's just not me. Let's put it that way.
Well, I think it's good, and again, I don't want to harp on the idea that you're doing some different stuff and you're having some fun with it. It's just, for as someone who reads a lot of horror books, it can get you can get into some sort of a slump if you read this book that's very similar by four different authors. And so if you get that you have four books in a row and they're all in the same vein, you're like, oh, I really like this horror movie, trope, or this camp slasher or
Yeah,
whatever it may be, and you read three, four camp slashers in a row, you're like, okay, they were different, but they weren't that different. And again, that's what I
yeah,
liked about this, My Ex, the Antichrist, is the fact that there are horror novels that deal with music out there, but there wasn't like an abundance of them. It's not like one of those things where you go and there's a section at the store, a horror, like a horror subsection of like horror music, stories.
right.
And so
Yeah,
that this to me, like, add that whole, I was like, I'm mowing the lawn or whatever, listening to an audiobook, and you're like, oh crap, I missed an entire section of the lawn because I was
yeah.
too entrenched in what was going on in the audiobook or something like that.
The
Like
audiobook
that.
is
And I was going to bring
as the
that up. The
young say
audiobook is
fire. It's fire.
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, it has a cast.
Hmm.
Um, it has some music in it. Like
Yep.
they really went all out on it, and
Hmm.
there's a lot of passion in the delivery. It's almost like a radio play in a way.
Hmm.
And I just thought the
They, they,
narrators did a
they it was
fantastic job.
phenomenal.
Episode 13's like that too. There was a full
Yes.
cast, and
Yeah.
it really went for it.
I was saying, I pointed it out because one of my favorite horror novels of recent years has been the Clown in the Cornfield series by Adam
Yeah.
Caesar, and Jesse Valinsky does the audio narration for those books, and Jesse is actually on My Ex, the Antichrist too. So that threw me in there. We're like, okay, I
Ah,
got to listen to the audiobook now. If I like the voice that she has in those, I'm gonna like the voice in here. And was like, the second she started talking, I was like, ah, yeah, that's what I signed up for right here.
right
But I
on.
mean, I think she's excellent at it. So
I didn't
yeah,
know there was that connection.
yeah,
That's great.
the same, like I said, same audiobook narration, or at least one of the four that does it. But I'm a big fan of that. There's a lot of people in this book, and so having it's either got to be to me like four or five people narrating it, or just one. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I can't like I listened to audiobooks where they've done like a male and a female, and one the male reads all the male voices and the female reads all the female voices. But like I still get lost sometimes when I'm listening
Yeah.
to those audiobooks because like at one point you're like, wait a second, isn't she dead? And then you're like, wait, the female's just doing all the voices and so on and so forth. With this section, there's like at least enough of a difference between voices that it was like one of those things where I could at least because you're listening to it, you have to focus a little bit differently than you do when you read a
Mhm.
physical book, and so having the different voices actually helped a lot, drastically for
Yeah.
like we said mowing the lawn or something like that where I would listen to audiobook. But I do a little hybrid reading, as people who listen to this podcast know that I do a lot of like in the car listen to the audiobook, get home, sit on the couch, read the physical book. And so it's
Yeah.
nice to have that and then I can put those voices to myself in my mind. Now I hear Jessie reading her lines and things like that in the book, which is really kind of cool. But yeah, the
I
audiobook is
wish I liked
fantastic.
audiobooks more. I find myself zoning out.
Hmm.
I just don't have the attention span.
Hmm.
And yeah, but it's weird if it was radio, like I love talk
Yeah.
radio in the car. So
Yeah.
um like NPR or something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so it's I don't know, it's weird. But I wish I did
Hmm.
because uh I I do some self-publishing as well. So I use Garrett Michael Brown for all
Yep.
of that. And he actually did the audiobook for How to Make a Horror Movie and
Hmm.
Survive.
Hmm.
He and I worked together a lot on a lot of World War II fiction. I write self-published. Um, but I always found that when I'm listening to
Yeah.
audio, like I'm proofing the book or I catch snippets or whatever of
Yeah.
an audiobook, I always find I feel like a reader reading my own work.
Yeah.
Whereas where you're the author, you can read your book like you've read it so many times, the
Yeah.
story's internalized. That's
Mm.
why it's so hard to catch typos in the
Mm.
11th hour
Yes,
because
exactly. Yeah.
every word's internalized.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But
with an audiobook, it's like really fresh. You really feel like you're experiencing it as a reader.
and I tend to do that either at the same time or if I for obviously for most of the advanced copies that you get the physical copy, so I tend to
Right.
read that, and then to say this wasn't obviously the book just came out on July 1st, My Ex the Antichrist. If we didn't talk this like in the past couple weeks and I had just read it, like if this book came out last year and I was reading it then and then we were getting ready to talk, I'd probably throw the audiobook in because it's a different experience to me. I feel like I'm reading the whole thing over again for the first
Yeah.
time. And so that I understand. I heard a lot of people who have trouble with reading audiobooks, and then they said they started
Yeah.
reading nonfiction audiobooks where it's something like the base information about. Like if you were to read like a JFK assassination
Mhm.
audiobook, but okay, he was assassinated, he was killed, he was in Texas. Like those pieces that if they started talking and you zoned out, you'd still be able to get the facts around what they were talking about, so you didn't really miss much. And
Yeah.
that's how they got their brain tuned into actually reading audiobooks or
Yeah.
listening to audiobooks. But yeah, I can understand that. There's definitely been times where I've zoned out before and I'm like, wait, I thought she died. And then she's back again or whatever that, or when did she die? Who, and like the chapter or like the sentence before that she gotten killed and I just zoned out. And so I have gone back and had to listen to that. But my wife can't listen to them either. My wife's one of those, she flies through novels, like physical
Yeah.
novels, but she's just like, I just can't do the audiobooks. So I'm like, I can
I
understand
wish
that.
I could.
Yep.
There's a lot of, yeah.
I
Just like
mean,
as a writer, I wish I could listen to music while I write.
well, right. Yeah.
Everybody's like Stephen King's like, yeah, I'm listening to,
Yeah.
like Black Sabbath while I'm
Yeah.
typing some, like I'm like, yeah, you're cool. I'm not.
No.
To me, it's like even a ticking tock.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, shut up. I'm writing. I haven't
I,
peed in 6 hours. I'm just sitting there. I'm like stooped on my chair with my feet up, and just. But in my head, all hell's breaking loose. But it's
yeah.
just me. Like it's like watching paint dry. Me.
It's funny because I've actually tried to write something or do something with like the vocal tracks taken out, so it's just instrumental. And even that to me was like I was like, oh, that was a cool note they just did. That to me is like I've zoned out. I'm like I can't even listen to that kind of stuff, but I can do audiobooks. It's weird. It's weird how the brain works in that sense. But to me, it's now we have such a gluttony of great fiction out there that it's kind of hard to find time for people to do all this stuff. So an audiobook adds that other element of people being able to like,
It's amazing.
I have a half an hour commute when I go into the
Yeah.
office, and so when I go into the office, it's a half an hour. So that's an hour of my day that I feel like I'm useless. I feel like I
Yeah.
can't do anything else, and so at least at that point, I can be like, oh, I could get an hour of an audiobook, and this is great. And so there's that use of time, in my opinion. I mean, I woke it up in the middle of the night before. I've been like, I shouldn't be sleeping. I need to get stuff done. And so, so I need some do something all the time. I can't just relax. And so to me, that
Yeah, same
audiobook is
here.
helpful in that sense because I can fill it with that. Or outside, it's just if I'm mowing the lawn. I'm like I'm accomplishing mowing the lawn, but I also could accomplish reading some books at the same time, which would be great. So
Yeah, max it out. Like, no,
yep,
I'm the guy who's in line at the bank
yeah,
for the teller, and I've got my Kindle.
yeah,
Like,
reading
and
along.
every people notice, like,
Yeah,
they're like, "Oh, he's actually reading a book." That's fun, other than just the phone. And but as far as audiobooks go, though, it's funny that because man, there are a couple things in publishing I totally called right.
yeah,
I'm going to give myself some credit, but then there's some stinker predictions I had, like, or things that I completely got wrong. And one of them was audiobooks. I really thought, audiobooks traditionally, me growing up was always for truckers and joggers
yep,
and people who are visually impaired
yep.
um, and so you didn't it wasn't really a big market, and but then all of a sudden
Hmm.
it was huge. And when my first Big Five published horror novel, Suffer the Children, was R.C. Bray.
Yep.
And R.C. Bray was big, but not that big yet. And that, but my agent David Fugit, I share with that agent this guy named, you may have heard of, Andy Weir. So,
Yeah.
and he did this book called The Martian, which was
Weird.
self-published, but
Yeah.
then
Yes.
got picked up, and then R.C. Bray did the narration, and he did such a good job with it. Like, the book, it was already exploding. It exploded more. R.C. Bray exploded. And suddenly, and then I ended up partnering with R.C. Bray on this little World War II series I did on a lark called Crash Dive. That book is still selling like crazy,
Mm.
and really selling like crazy on audio. And I think that's R.C. Bray.
Yeah.
And I learned this lesson, like, oh my God, it's not only big, but the person you partner with on the narration can get you as many readers as your story is getting
Hmm.
itself. Like, it's pretty amazing how big it is. And
Hmm.
you go into I remember the first time I went into an airport, and I'm like, there's an Audible ad, floor to wall Audible ad for books.
Yes.
Someone's advertising books in a public space like
Yep.
that. You don't see that very,
No.
very often. So I was like, holy cow, this is huge. And it's just been absolutely, I just love to see how many people
Yep.
are enjoying it that way. And I've never been one. I remember, I'm old enough to remember the whole trad. Print is going to die,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
ebooks. Self is. I'm like, I don't care. I just want
Yeah.
people to enjoy my stories, and so the format doesn't matter. So audio coming on as like this third huge
Yeah.
thing is just wonderful.
Well, I feel like it's another. It's just if you look at it, like if you go to Amazon or bookshop.org or any of these ones, it's listed. There's like three different buttons. It says
Yep.
hardcover, it says ebook, it says Audible or audiobook, and it's like it's just another way to collect it in a sense too. And not that people are collecting on their iPhones like their audiobooks, they're reading it and then storing it. If they ever want to listen to it again, they'll listen to it again. But I think that to me, it's like I listen to a lot of audiobooks, but I buy the print copy too because I'm like I don't know if I ever want to read this on print again or read it for the first time in print and then audio. And so it's just another
Yeah.
way for people to it's making people reading your novels have more accessibility to them. And I think
Yeah.
that's what's really cool about it. If you can only
Yeah.
you cannot find time. You've got three kids at home, you've got a full-time job, and you cannot find time to sit down and read a physical novel, but you can
Yep.
crush through a couple novels on audiobook.
Yeah, and
It's
it's
great.
it's also like in its own way an adaptation.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's not just your book. There's
Hmm.
there's an artist interpreting
Hmm.
your work and
Hmm.
presenting it. And someone is buying that and
Yes.
reacting to that. So it's just fascinating to me. I love the audiobooks. And
Yeah.
I'm glad so many people enjoy them. It's just amazing.
It's really cool, and I just talked to Paul Tremblay, and his book horror movie, the adaptation on that. They actually did
Yep.
things in the adaptation of the audiobook that were slightly different than the physical book, where
Yeah.
there's lines that the people were reading that they read more than one time on the audiobook because they were trying to get it right. And
Yeah.
someone had messaged him and said, "Hey, you know, there's an error in your podcast or your audiobook, right? Because it says that." He goes, "No, that was on purpose. It was what would actually be sound like if they were reading the lines and they were messing up on the lines they were saying again." And that was
Yeah.
some sort of liberty they took in the audiobook, which gives you an entire other experience. It's an
Yeah.
adaptation of the physical book, which is really cool. So, and so like you mentioned with this one, there's a little bit of music, a little bit of sound effects, and that kind of just adds a little bit more of a production to what your story is when it's on paper, which is really cool. And again, it's another whole way of reading a book. And to me, I'm always like, you write these books so other people can be entertained by them. So however they entertain themselves with it's up to them, but you're the one writing the story. And if they want to read it on physical copy, in a hardcover, print, ebook, audiobook, whatever it may be, they're getting the story that you spent a lot of hard time and work on, which is really cool. And so audiobook, print copy, whatever it is. It's hard to sign an audiobook though, right? If if you
Yeah.
go to a
Yeah.
signing, you're like, here, can you sign my phone,
Yeah.
please? But yeah,
I was
it's a,
going to say Tremblay is one of those authors who, like, it's always
yeah,
you never know exactly
yeah.
what you're going to get.
Hmm.
He's not I wouldn't call him super experimental in form,
Yeah,
but in storytelling, I would
yeah,
consider him more. And it's less off the beaten, it's more off the beaten path.
yes,
His interpretations of tropes, and
yes.
so I'll give him that.
The
Um,
other one I would add into that category when you mentioned that earlier was Daniel Kraus. I think Daniel Kraus has that. There's no like he has like horror novels. He's doing sci-fi novels. He's doing a bunch of other things. But and he's
yeah,
also not only doing that, he's experimenting with how it's written. Like Angel
yeah,
Down right now being one full sentence in that style and so on and so forth. So it's really cool. And so you can put yourself in those categories, which is really cool. Of like,
yeah,
again, it's not so different that you're going to be like all of a sudden now out of nowhere your book's in a different language that you can't read
yeah,
you can't read that if you don't speak
right,
that language, but it's different enough. Again, to me it's a refresher. It's like, okay, I think I'm going to enjoy this book from you because I know what your other books are like,
right,
but I don't know really what I'm getting into fully
right,
yet
right.
until I read the last page and go, oh, that's what that was. And so
Yeah,
I think it's fun. I think it's cool. And I think it keeps you on your toes too. I feel like you'd be bored if you were just writing the same thing over and over and over again by changing a
yeah,
few things and things like that. I feel like your creative juices work better when
yeah,
you're doing something different and fun. This duology obviously is changing some things up for you, and so you have a little bit more fun with that, a little bit more, and then we get the best out of you. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like if
yeah,
it's you're not just phoning it in. You're not. There's some authors
yes,
out there that I'm not going to mention that seem like they have a book coming out every 6 months. They're just like, oh, cool, it's the same thing with a different name on the book, and
yeah.
that to me, they've got their fans. But to me, I feel like I can't get into it because I want
Somebody,
something different.
yeah,
Yep.
people are winning in that arrangement.
Mm.
And yeah, that's
That's who it is. But we're not going to
and
mention
I've been on
anybody.
the other end of that where
Yes.
I've read an author and I've been like, oh, I like this author's voice. So I'll
Yeah.
read like 5 books in a row, and then all of
Yeah.
a sudden I'll OD on it, and
Yeah.
I'll never read that author again. I'll be even though I was like obsessed,
Yeah.
like I love that voice, and then I
Yeah.
like, oh, I can't do this anymore.
Yes, anymore. I can't do it anymore. No,
Can't
it's
do it
crazy.
anymore.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
listened to the song over and over again, and enough.
and
You know what I
you're
mean? It's
reading.
like an earworm almost.
Yes. You're reading the book in the shower. Like, which book was that? They're all the same. No. But I'm pumped and I'm so glad that your books are being well received because again, I'm a big fan of yours. So that just adds more to the fact that you'll get more books published so that I can
Yeah,
read them in the future. I don't care what they're about. I want to read them in the future, which is really cool. But My Axe the Antichrist is phenomenal for horror fans, for those fans that are like music stuff, the oral history part, that whole like way of storytelling of it is pretty awesome. If you and I do believe I will say they aren't the same, but if you do are friends of episode 13 or how to make a horror movie and survive, I do think that you'll like this book. So it's not like we talked about how they're not all the same, but in the same sense, I do feel like they have at least a small thread that goes through that makes it so people will like, all three of them. If you haven't read any of them, I recommend reading them. But it came out July 1st, which is awesome. This started the summer off really well for us here as book fans, and I'm excited for more from you. But yeah, My Ex, the Antichrist is available at bookstores everywhere, everywhere. And I will say this again. I feel like I'm a broken record for those who listen to the podcast that yes, buying local is awesome. Go to your local bookstore, buy this book, give them the business, give them the sale. Bookshop.org is a great spot for that if you're looking to support your local bookstore. But here's the deal. If you're going to buy it and the only way you can buy it is on something like Amazon, just buy the book. That's my whole, the big box stores and those big, huge conglomerates are not
Go to
always
the
great.
library.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a good point right there. But my whole thought was like, if it's between not reading the book or reading the book because you don't want to buy it on Amazon, it's one of those things that I'm like, if I want people to read this book because I really enjoyed it, so buy it wherever you can buy it. Don't not buy it because you don't want to buy it on Amazon. But your local library is a good point there too.
Yep.
And if they don't have it, just tell them, because that obviously does really well for you and your publisher as well,
Yep, they'll get it.
showing that you're worth the investment into in that sense too. So, but I appreciate you taking the time out, Craig, and coming on here and chatting my ex, the Antichrist, and so much more. I really do take you're a busy person. I'm glad you took some time out to talk to us.
Oh, good. Thanks for having me on, Justin.
We'll get you on in the future when your next book comes out and stuff like that. We'll be in
Sure.
touch. It sounds good, but I really do appreciate it, and best of luck and all that stuff. And hopefully in the next month or two, you'll see this sales are just rolling in for this book, in my opinion. So I really liked it. So I enjoyed it. Thanks a lot, Craig.
Thank you.